Hey guys, Pocky here, and if you guys missed it, there was just the announcement, the first reveals as well, of the new tribe Nagas being added to Battlegrounds on May 10th with patch 23.2. They're pretty exciting. However, I just wanted to share some of my first initial thoughts. Obviously, we haven't seen everything, so subject to change, as always. But I'm a little worried, and I'm curious how things are going to develop after we see the reveals over the next couple of days. And just wanted to provide my initial thoughts on some of the cool things about Nagas and some of the things that I think we might see pop up as issues with their balance and design once they sort of get up to speed and once everyone starts playing them for a little bit. If you guys don't know, Nagas are a new type, and they're focused on spells being played. Spells in the current form of Battlegrounds exist as gems, coins, and triples, right? The triple discovery counts as a spell. However, Nagas also have their own form of spell generation through a new keyword, Spellcraft. Spellcraft will be an effect on a minion that will give you a spell when it's played and at the beginning of every turn afterwards that has an effect for that turn and that turn only. You need to use the spell on that turn or it'll disappear. So it'll be something where at the beginning of every turn your hand will fill with these spellcraft spells and you'll have to decide through your turn during the recruit phase how you want to utilize those spells. And some of the Nagas will have effects when you play spells. One of these cards is Tide Mistress Athesa. If you look at this new 6-drop, what it does is after you cast a spell, give 4 friendly Naga plus 1/1. And immediately, obviously, that sort of reminds you of like Agam or Caligos, where you're playing something and scaling up your board all at once. And immediately, my thought is that this will either be something that's super good, or it'll be something that isn't going to be able to have enough impact, right? It can be something where the scaling is a little bit more on the side of Light Fang, and we don't know exactly how good the Naga minions are going to be, how much utility they'll have. Obviously, having utility is super important. But if their scaling isn't good enough, you know, it won't be an impactful card. The other thing is that you have to balance around certain other cards that provide spells. So the notable thought here is something like Flat Tusk can generate a ton of gems for you, and then you have to play them each turn, right? And get a ton of scaling. Or something like Gem Splitter, right? Where if you saw Crypt's reveal on the new Divine Shield Naga, that's something where you would get Divine Shields every turn through the spellcraft of that Naga, and you could play your gems and play the Divine Shields such that Tide Mistress Athesa would be buffing your whole board, and you'd be getting gems every turn from a Gem Splitter, and you could even shield that Gem Splitter to really make it safe and scale it with gems, because you don't need to focus the gems specifically on certain, because Athesa is working as your Agam anytime you actually cast the spell, rather than having to play it on something like Agam or Shaker, where you have to play the gems on a specific minion. So it could be very easy that if spell generation and collection is too easy, that some of the Nagas sort of go out of control. And the concern is that if they don't have that much generation, then some of these things might not play as well, and we're not going to be sure about how much that scaling is going to matter. We also see Snail Cavalry is something that gains health permanently once per turn, though, and so you wonder, is that going to be enough scaling to just gain a bit of health every time you play one spell once per turn? And are the spells going to be good enough to sustain everything? Obviously, the Divine Shield one is very strong, but what other sort of utility are we going to get? Or is it going to mostly be focused on stats like we saw on some of the previews with Mini Myrmidon and Shoal Commander? With it's just those stats, it's something that can sort of have an issue with having to balance those spells so that they're strong enough, because it's not generally permanent scaling. And so are they going to be able to be something that is good enough to be played and have an impact, or are they going to be too weak and then it's sort of underpowered? That's where it gets into a really difficult design position. We saw that with Diablo, right? Where the spells were something that were more of a one-time use, something that only impacted one fight, and you had to really consider how to use those. With Nagas, you're gonna have to use those spells every fight, but are they gonna be powerful enough to really have an impact when they're only for that fight and not permanent scaling, when a lot of other tribes are doing a lot more permanent scaling stuff, like the Egum, like the Caligos, etc. Of course, this is all going to be super different as well, because other big news that was announced is that buddies are going to be retired from Battlegrounds for the moment, and so we'll be experiencing Nagas in a buddy-free environment, and that's going to make things very interesting. Overall, I'm excited. I'm excited for a new meta. I'm excited for a shake-up to Battlegrounds. I think it's deeply needed, and so we'll see how things turn out. I'm a little concerned that the challenge of balancing some of the spellcraft stuff and the spells is gonna be a hard middle ground to really balance, and so we'll see how they do. I think that they were inspired a lot by the original Quillbores and the fun that people had trying to manage gems and stuff, and now you're gonna have to manage spells. But we saw how out of hand the gems got with Quillbores originally, and then now how Quillbores have also sort of fallen by the wayside in favor of other comps that scale better, or using those Quillbores to scale other comps, namely using Gem Splitter rather than any other Quillbore. We don't see like Charlie or Dynamic Duo having that much impact. Even a Bonker is usually more of a temporary unit that you're just taking because it's the best tempo, and the gems aren't as big of a deal because they've sort of paled in comparison to the rest of the scaling that we see. So I think Nagas might run into that same issue of being really hard to find that middle ground that I don't think we have exactly found with Quillbores for long stretches. Certainly there were points when Quillbores were viable and good and not overpowered, but in the context of the whole game, it's something that's going to be really difficult. So that's what I'd keep my eye out on. It'll be fun to try them out in an environment without buddies, and it'll be fun to see what the rest of the reveals are the rest of this week. I know there's some really cool creators that got reveals, and so I'll be looking forward to those releases, and I hope you are too. And yeah, hopefully we'll get some great changes to the game. I'm really excited. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this little recap, be sure to drop a comment in the comments below if you have some thoughts, and subscribe to the channel because it helps me a ton. Thanks so much, and as always, peace.